So there's a lot that has gone on this week, and I still stand by what I said last week. Unless you're a Savior, don't leave your home. Be greater, not lesser. Make the time home with your family as good as possible. You want to remember these days properly. But it requires a two-part conversation. There is what I want to say in a sermon by way of inspiration and talking about the days we're in, and I also want to talk about what's going on in the world, and I'm going to do that first. So you might have heard the news a few days ago. Some Sephardic Orthodox rabbis approved the use of Zoom at the Seder, provided that it stayed on, nobody shut it off. They were going to be lenient about use of technology during a Seder. A few days later, they were forced to backtrack because of the pressure they're under not to change the value system that they uphold. Forget them. They're not invited to your Seder. You didn't ask them for their opinion. Don't worry about what they say. We need to find a way to bring as many people to our Seder as possible. It is our hope that when we live stream, we will have a Zoom conversation. So whoever is joining us, you'll be able to see hundreds, maybe thousands of people, if we're lucky, joining us for that special moment. It could be an incredible thing. I'm planning some really wonderful surprises for the Seder to make it heartwarming and meaningful for everybody. But what's really important to us is not to listen to people who are telling you what your Seder is and your Seder isn't. And particularly, what's really interesting for me is rabbis in London have decided that this is not the year to be stringent. And they've allowed so many things on this list that are not unkosher for Pesach, they're just not kosher for Pesach, like butter. Remember all the things you've been complaining about all these years? Rabbi, why do I have to have kosher Passover sugar? If it's sugar, it's sugar. If it's butter, it's butter. What's the difference? The answer is this year they said you're right. You don't have to worry about it. Olive oil is olive oil. If it's pure, it's pure. And you don't need a special certification for Passover. This year, they agree with you. It's a leniency for them. But for me, it's a bottom line. I'm not prepared to make my Jewish observance uncomfortable or difficult. And this is the way I've always felt. And the fact that it's permitted this year proves it's permitted. They just prefer that we be stringent. There is a fundamental concept that divides people about Passover that goes, it's very simple. It goes like this. Passover is a time to observe the laws, not eating chametz, leavened bread, etc., beer, anything made with the 5 grains. That's what, for most people, it is. Clean your house, get on with it. And for other people, it's an opportunity in which they enact stringency. To prove their devotion to the commandment, they enact stringency. And they've put this in writing. And you could find a lot of responsa about the idea that Passover is a time in which we are stricter. And to my ears, that says uncomfortable. Making Judaism uncomfortable for Jews. Passover is not a time to be stricter. It's a time to find ways to make it easier and still meaningful. So I've always said at shul, I've always given a sermon about how to clean your house for Passover in 5 minutes or less, which is a joke, but it doesn't take that long because there's only certain things you need to do to clean your home, and that will be probably next week. But the reality is, let's make it easier, and this year, everything that is easier is permitted because it has to be. But I'm not going back next year. When next year they try to turn the clock back, I'm reminding them it's permitted. And if they want to make it uncomfortable or stricter, that's their choice, not mine. So when you ask various rabbis what to do for Passover, and they tell you that a Seder cannot be held over Zoom, ignore them. When they tell you that you need 10 people in a room in order to have a proper Seder, forget that. When they tell you all the rules that you can't have rice, if you need to have rice, you can have rice. You don't have to have rice, but rice is permitted. It's just always been the thing that we didn't do, the kitniot. Kitniot are not grains. Kitniot are legumes, so they cannot become chametz. But our tradition has been not to have them. But this year, what if you don't have enough food? What if you can't afford matzah? What if you can't get matzah? Okay. So you have to be careful what you eat and what you don't. I will be posting resources for Passover about lists of what you can and cannot eat for Passover, but trust me on this. You're going to discover how much stringency went into Passover this year, and we're not going backwards. Can you do it over phone, over Skype? Yes. We will provide a Haggadah. We're going to put an online Haggadah up for you, so you will be able to follow the Seder, whether you're doing it at home or whether you're doing it together with us. If you need supplies for Passover, let us know, or let the various organizations know. B'nai B'rith is working very hard to get food. UJA Federation is working hard to get things to you. Let them know that you need help, and they will make sure you get something. Don't open the door for Elijah. Do not open the door for Elijah. Not because he's not a good guy. Elijah comes as a symbol of peace, but he's been everywhere. He's been to everybody's house. Don't open. Okay? He can leave it at the door if there's anything he's delivering and go. Just be careful with that guy. Seder should last as long as you want. You can make it short, you can take breaks, you can read, you can call people, you can do anything you need during the Seder to make it last a little bit longer. Anyhow, more questions to come. Don't invite your neighbors unless you've isolated with them. Do not make this Seder your last. Feel free to send me any questions about Passover, anything that you want. On our website, there's a new communication box. You can go there and send us anything that you want to send. Friends, just to be pretty blunt with you, 2 rabbis that I know personally, since I've been a child, have passed away this week. I know them not because they're great rabbis, but because my family and I were close with them in New York and New Jersey. It's so real. It's becoming more and more real. It's hard. And I've been thinking a lot about what it means to live when things are very real. Okay. Let me grab my sermon. Maybe I don't have one. Right here. There's a concept in Jewish life called Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lazeh. All of Israel are guarantors one for the other. And it really means that we are all responsible for each other, but never, ever before have we felt that responsibility as strongly as we do now, that each one of us could possibly hurt someone else, or how you would feel when someone gets too close to you, how they could hurt you. We are responsible for every single person we come into distant contact with. We now feel a sense of responsibility about our engagements and our social engagement like never before. If you are a responsible human being, you are caring about everybody within your reach, and you are caring that they care about you within your reach. More than ever, we are arevim ze lazeh. We are responsible for each other's well-being by keeping each other at a distance or keeping our loved ones close. It's a lot of work, and that responsibility has been lost on a lot of people. 1 in 5 Canadians, as of last week, believe that the coronavirus response is overblown. It's irresponsible. The government's going too far. It's a reduction of civil liberties. It's a plot. Who knows what they're thinking? Hopefully that number's changed now. But the responsibility that we have for each other has never been greater. And when I'm contemplating the story of the Haggadah, I always think to myself, and I did a podcast on this, which is on our livingjewishly.org website, who is the Rasha? Who is the wicked son? And I always felt, sitting at the Seder, of course, I was the one without the black hat. I was the wicked son. And over the years, I've developed a whole different set of ideas about why in the Haggadah there's the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who just doesn't know what's going on. And we talk about these things, but I've realized now the Rasha is somebody else. The wise person says, tell me about what's going on. Tell me about why you're doing the Passover sacrifice. Tell me about where we're going. Tell me about the Exodus. Who's Moses? Why is Pharaoh mean to us? That is the story in the text in which it says, you shall tell your child on that day, because of this, our ancestors went out of Egypt, because of the Pesach, the Matzah, the Maror. That's the story of the Haggadah. You'll read it, the 4 sons. The Rasha says almost the same thing that the wise son says. What are you doing? Except because he says, what are you doing? What the hell is this? He's considered to be the wicked one, and it says, Hakea Shina, blunt his teeth, or fight back, or be aggressive, whatever that really means. I've discovered that the Rasha is somebody else, not the bad dude, not the wicked kid, not the evil one. I've realized now that the Rasha is the one who, unlike the wise son says, what are you doing? Meaning, why do we do what we do? Because we're instructed by God, by Jewish law, to do what? To go to shul, to pray, to be part of a minyan, to be part of a community, to have brit milah, to have circumcision, to have Jewish traditions. The wise son says, that's nice, that's really good. And how does that work with the world? Like, how does it work? Like, I see all these other things you're doing. How does that dovetail with that? Well, science is important. The rabbis have authority, but we listen to the laws of gravity. We follow the rules of physics. We also follow the rules of society. We don't allow our religious fervor or our rabbis to tell us what to do when it's beyond rational. In other words, the wise son is one who says, what are you doing? In context with what's going on in the world. The Rasha says, why do you need to do that? What does that mean? The Rasha is asking a question, which is, we know the story. Why do you need all this other hocus pocus that you're doing? Why do we need to observe the commandments? Why do we need to have blood on our door and stay in our house? Why do we need to be the one who listens to reason when we have faith? Why is it that today, this morning, friends, I need to ask this question because it hurts to have to ask the question. Why is it that somebody that we know has gone out of their condominium to go and pray in a minyan secretly? Why is it that people are still doing that? And who are the other 9 or more people in that room? And then they go home to their families and to their communities. Who is the Rasha now? Who is the wicked one? The one who says, why do you need all this science? And why do you need all the doctors? What's wrong with God told us to go to the minyan? Just go to the minyan. That, my friend, is today's Rasha, today's evil person. I don't know how to stop that person. I don't know how to stop these secret underground minyanim. Maybe they believe that they're part of the oppressed class and this is an anti-Semitic plot of some sort. They need to get out of their evil ways and start listening to the wise son who says, tell me how I balance my requirements for God's law with science and rational thinking. It sickens me to know that that's what's happening this morning here in Toronto. There's a principle in Jewish law called Shev Va'al Ta'aseh. There are there are mitzvot that you can do, there are good commandments you can do by just not doing anything. Sit and don't do. One of those examples is Shabbat. By not doing something, that is fulfilling the commandment. Not every mitzvah, not every deed is an action. Sometimes it's a non-action. Do not eat chametz is a non-action. Not eating chametz is different than eating matzah, which is an action. This is a time in which we need to balance the actions and the non-actions. The wise son knows the balance. The wicked son thinks only of his or her religious fervor and ignores the essence of what's going on around them. So I've been thinking about what's going to happen to business, to the markets, to society, to our entire value system when this is all over. I'm wondering what's going to happen to Jewish people with this rupture in our engagement in traditional life, especially coming around a major holiday like Passover. How is it going to change the way we think? How are we going to interact with our families differently? How has it changed the way you think about family life? Some of you are struggling. I know. You tell me. Some of you are not. Some of you are embracing it. Some of you are finding creative ways to deal with it. Some of you are struggling with the idea that you have little children at home, and it's hard to have little children at home all day long and be their caregiver when they would have been in school. And it's hard to educate online. Some schools are doing a marvelous job. But it's very hard, and people are struggling. People are struggling financially, emotionally. I don't need to go through it. You all know that. But I'm wondering how it's going to change us. And while I'm on it, I want to say something. I've started to see a lot of media now, videos in which people are doing, well, COVID is here, and look how much we've learned from it. Look at all the good things that have come out of it. This good story, that good story, I appreciate the optimism, but do me a favor, save it, please. Right now, it's a struggle to get by daily. Nobody believes you when you tell them, look at all the great things that have come out of it. Great things will come out of it, but terrible things are coming out of it too. Let's not turn everything into a blessing entirely. This is terrible. There may be silver lining. Save it, please. I got other things to worry about. We have fundamental issues, the collapse of everything that we hold dear, our ability to function. If this goes on much longer, some of us will not be able to restrain ourselves. It's incredibly, incredibly hard to do what we're doing. So save me the happy days. We'll get to that. But I don't want to talk about doom and gloom only. I believe that good days are ahead, and Pesach is an opportunity for us to talk about how we choose to see our current situation and our future. I don't want to lose our perspective. I don't want to lose it by having no Pesach. I don't want to lose it by pretending Pesach is just going to be the way it always was. And I definitely don't want to impose on people they should have the ordinary Pesach as though everything is fine, and that's why I want to make sure that we have this talk. There are two narratives about Passover that you can find in the book of Exodus, and I referenced this briefly in the past. The first one is that the night before Exodus, they were to make a Seder and have the Passover, the matzah, the maror, the bitter herbs, and they were to do all that in anticipation of leaving Egypt. They were to sit at the table with their walking sticks, getting ready to go. But they were to actually make matzah that night before and eat the matzah as the poor man's bread. And the next morning, when they were released and they went towards the Exodus, they left home with their dough. And of course, as you know, dough, when it's traveling, you don't have time to let it rise. And there's a second narrative of Passover, which is that they had no time and they baked their dough on the hot rocks, and that's where matzah comes from. So it's either matzah comes from the poor man's bread that they had the night before, or it comes from the dough that they didn't have time to rise. But there's two narratives, and this week we are talking about narrative number 2. We are all in a place, on a journey, in which we are living in a time of the unknown. And I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, when was the last time that you lived in a time as unknown and as fraught with risk as we have right now? Very few of us can say, I did. Very few. Some can. Holocaust survivors, immigrants, people come from difficult places, but most of us have lived lives that are predictable and risk-free, and the unknown, while being ordinarily unknown, was not like it is now, in which nothing about our future is truly known anymore. We don't know where we will bake our bread. We are in a true Exodus moment in which we are free people and we can't go anywhere. And we don't know whether we'll have a place to bake bread or not. We may just end up baking our bread in the hot sun. We may not have the opportunity to put it in an oven or let it rise. We don't know what's next. And think of the metaphor of Pesach, in which they are surrounded by water when they're crossing the Red Sea. And the water can engulf them at any time. We are living in a time that is extraordinarily fraught, and I want to say to you, to me, this is real Pesach. This is real Passover. I've studied Passover my entire life. Every year it's been a big, huge deal for me and for you. And we've talked about what it must have meant to them and what it means to be in that moment of unknowing and to have Egypt still regain its strength and come after you at the sea. And sitting at the table, b'chipazon, in a hurry, trying to eat in a hurry. Eating with shpilkis, not knowing what's coming next, not knowing what the future holds. That is where we are today, and I, for one, intend to embrace it. I will not allow real Pesach to miss me this year. I want to be part of Exodus. I do not want to let it happen without me. I want to be there. I want to take my dough with me and bake it wherever I can. I don't want someone to tell me anything's for sure, and I don't want to sleep through this. The world is in transition, and if there ever was a moment in which the words of Psalm 23 meant something, beyond the personal tragedies and suffering we all have, Gam ki elech begates al maves lo irura. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Ki atai madi, because you are with me. If we are all in this together, that means that tomorrow morning, after the night of Exodus, that night of Passover, we emerge from our homes, from the bloody lintel, we come out and we look around and we say, we're all here. Let's go together. We're free. It's real. I'm not missing this one. To many of you, this will be the most important Passover ever. It will test everything about you. It will test your ability to have a real conversation about real fears and anxieties. It will ask you to measure your fear and anxiety against the fear and anxiety of your ancestors. What was it like to be in Warsaw, in the ghetto, Seder night, when the Nazis began their extermination? That was real. What was it like to be in Egypt after Pharaoh had massacred, over hundreds of years, various pharaohs had massacred the firstborn, the boys of Israel. Every boy that he could get his hands on had been murdered for years. It was national policy. And people were enslaved and beaten and bruised. And women were stolen. After all those years, was it real? It was real. It wasn't just a happy story of matzah baking. It was real. The scars on their backs were real. Was it real when the soldiers in the Civil War, who were Jewish, had to make Passover with no food? And in order to make sure that they remembered the bricks of slavery, they put actual bricks under their Seder plate? Was it real when women discovered that they weren't in the Haggadah? And that's how the orange came to be on the Seder plate? It was real. I don't want to be left out. And this is the most real story most of us have ever experienced. This is the most real fear, real inconvenience, real suffering. Now, some of you may be saying, Rabbi, I don't agree with you. I'm at home. I'm having a good time. I'm catching up on my Netflix shows. I'm catching up on my homework. I'm doing all the things around my house. Yeah, but you don't know what your future holds. You don't know whether you're going to be at home till December. One day you might run out of food. You might run out of money. You might run out of patience. You might lose a loved one. We don't know anything any minute anymore. I actually believe that the first Passover happened to people. This Passover is happening to us. Down the road, we are going to be a unique generation. People who experienced something unprecedented, extraordinary. I want the same result. I want the Exodus. I want freedom. I want salvation. I want a good future. But right now, we're right in the thick of everything that makes up Passover. Passover is not about the food. Passover is not about the book. Passover is not about the talking. Passover is about gathering the people you love most around you, and that includes your ancestors and your future. And it includes whoever is nearby. Don't make it about the food. Don't worry about it. Eat whatever you want. As long as it's kosher for Passover, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about the dishes. Let's be as lenient as possible this year. Don't worry about the menu. Don't worry about anything. And please, don't show off to everyone how perfect your life is right now, because nobody's life is perfect. We are living in notable times, no different than the Hanukkah story or the Purim story. This generation is experiencing a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and you're part of it, and I am. And I will not let it pass me by inexperienced. I want to conclude with a story, one of the most inspirational stories for me, and I want to share it with you. It's about never giving up on the future and the leadership required to do that. Jeremiah the prophet was locked up because his prophecy did not follow the propaganda of the state. And Zedekiah, the king, locked him up. Jeremiah refused to be a propaganda machine and say all the good things that they wanted to hear. And he languished in jail, the great prophet Jeremiah. And then Jeremiah does something almost unimaginable. he has a prophecy about Hanamel. Hanamel owns a piece of land, and he's distantly related to Jeremiah. Jeremiah has the right to purchase this land. But who would purchase land? You're the prophet, and you've just finished prophesying doom and gloom for Judah and Israel. You've just prophesied that the entire people of Israel will be destroyed and taken away to Babylon. It's hopeless. You've publicly told the world it is coming to an end. But Hanamel shows up and says, would you like to buy my land? And he says, my land is in a place called Anatot, which you can go to today. It's Anata. It's just outside of Jerusalem. It's the village where the priests ran to. It's a whole biblical story. And he says, I have a field there. Will you buy it? And Jeremiah says, I bought this field from my cousin Hanamel. I weighed out the money in silver, 17 silver shekels. And I wrote a deed, and I sealed it, and I had it witnessed, and I weighed the silver on a scale. And I took the bill of sale, says Jeremiah, the sealed and the unsealed parts, and I gave the bill of sale to my student, Baruch the son of Neriah, and they all watched me. My cousin, Baruch, my relatives, the witnesses, all the Judeans who were sitting in the courtyard of the guard, they watched. And as they watched, I instructed Baruch. And this is what Jeremiah says. God of Israel says, take these deeds, this bill of sale, the sealed and the unsealed parts, and put them into an earthenware jar so they should last for a long time. For God of Israel says, houses and fields and vineyards will again be purchased in this land. It's not over. And then Jeremiah prays and he says, God, you've made heaven and earth. You've showed kindness to 1,000 generations. You performed signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. You took your people out of the land of Egypt with signs and wonders, with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and great terror. You gave them a land flowing with milk and honey. You swore to their ancestors that you would give them. And yet, you're about to destroy this land, and you say to me, buy land? And God says, is there anything too difficult for me? I'm not here preaching the word of God to you, but I want to tell you. We will again be out there, buying, spending, loving, dancing, hugging, kissing. Those of us who want to believe in the future have to act like there's a future. And that is why I have asked this shul to start our membership renewal after Pesach, because I believe we'll be back here, all of us. I believe, like Jeremiah, it's time to buy land, because yet there will be vineyards and fields and houses being built, and there will be a hope that even though we are truly living in the fear of the real Exodus, the day is coming. Prepare yourself for a changed future. But I don't want to miss it. Stay in the moment, my friends. May this be the year that while we're experiencing Exodus and the fear of the unknown, we look around and we say, when this is over, how am I going to make it better? Stay close. Let's stay close so when this is over, we're still together. I truly appreciate all of you being here with me. It's comforting. For me, I know it's comforting for others. I know that there's no big answers. It's just got to take time. We're waiting to be told it is time for Exodus. We are free people, but we are trapped. Soon may we be free, all of us, in good health. Amen and Shabbat Shalom.